What is going on, Pats Nation? You guys already know who it is. Patriots Couple back here with another video. And in this one, we're going to be talking about the New England Patriots complete roster cuts to get down to the 53-man roster. And then, of course, their initial 53-man roster. Now, we call it the initial 53-man roster because tomorrow these moves are likely to be made. Guys have to make the initial 53-man roster before they can be placed on IR. If they're placed on IR before making the initial 53, then their season is over. So I would expect guys like maybe Tyquan Thornton and maybe even Riley Reef to be placed on the IR probably tomorrow now that they both made the initial 53-man roster, which means that they would be out for the first 4 weeks of the season, and then the Patriots could bring them back, and then that would open up two two roster spots. We don't know the practice squad yet. We'll know that tomorrow. And I originally wanted to break this down into two separate videos, cuts, and then the final roster. But unfortunately, today didn't go as planned. And before we hop into today's video, I do just want to let you guys know something about the channel. This is more channel news. And if you really don't care and you really just want to get to the video, then, you can skip. I don't have a timestamp, but you can just kind of skip along. But unfortunately, today I found out that effective yesterday, this channel has been demonetized. Something that took me back, caused me a lot of stress, something I was trying to figure out all day. I'm in talks with YouTube to try to figure things out. For those who don't know, I am a college student. I did just start school, and this is my job. This is what I do. I run this channel completely by myself. The artwork, the research, the ideas, the uploading, the pre-production, the post-production, every single thing you see about this channel from top to bottom and everything you've seen since the start of this channel has been done by me and will always be done by just me. So with that being said, this channel being monetized is a big way to make an income so that we can pay for a house, and we can pay for food, and we can pay for Wi-Fi, and we can pay for all of the digital necessities we need in order to access this channel. So cross your fingers that we can get this figured out and get the channel monetized again, but there is a possibility of this channel not being monetized for as long as November and even upwards to December, which would absolutely kill things. So with that being said, it would be a massive, massive favor if you guys could do me a favor during this rough time, and by supporting the channel. Obviously, we're not making anything off these videos right now, is to support the sponsors of this channel, including BetUS, who is our sponsor for the entire season. My friends over at BetUS are going to give you guys a 125% sign-up bonus when you sign up with my own personal specialized link in the description below and pin in the comment section below. I know some of you are skeptical on, do I want to bet yet? Do I not want to bet yet? The great news is that I'm going to have you covered for my favorite bets, Patriots and not Patriots, all season long via BetUS. We're going to make some money together, and we're not going to lose money because we are going to bet responsibly. Make sure you guys are 21 in your select states and do bet responsibly. I suggest you guys go ahead right now and sign up. Signing up is completely free. It doesn't cost you anything. Just sign up with the link in the description below, in the comment section below, and just look at BetUS because they truly do have the best odds out of any sports book. And they're not only a sports book, but also a casino. And I do want to show you guys one of my favorite bets. So we've talked a lot about the futures that I like on BetUS. Love that ability that BetUS gives you to be able to bet on like who's going to win the Super Bowl, who's going to make the Super Bowl, who's going to make the playoffs and not make the playoffs, all that good stuff that we've talked about on this channel a lot. But let's talk about week one because the odds are finally out for week one. Patriots at home against the Philadelphia Eagles. I like total game, and it's not going to be over 45, right? We all know it's going to be under 45 points. The Philadelphia Eagles with their dominant defense, the Patriots with their dominant defense. Question marks about the Patriots offense, but I think, no offense in the league truly does start off all that hot, especially not the Patriots. So to me, this is a gold mine to bet on under 45 total for the game. So just a little pitch there for you guys to make. Remember, guys, that we would be absolutely nowhere without the sponsors of this channel. So please make sure you guys check out BetUS and you support the sponsors that support the channel, because without them, we literally could not be here today making this video for you. So go ahead, check out BetUS, sign up, and check out all of their amazing. And so I think the best way at kind of knocking out the roster cutdowns is to talk about the trades. We obviously know about Pierre Strong. He was traded for Tyrone Wheatley. We made a video on that, but we also had a trade earlier today. The New England Patriots sending kicker Nick Folk off to the Titans, something that I was tweeting about, and it actually ended up happening. Mike Vrabel, Bill Belichick, that connection ultimately meets up, and Big Kick Nick is officially out of New England. Got to thank Nick for everything. He was an absolute all-star for this team, but that helps them kind of knock down here, getting the 53 players. The Patriots getting a 2025 seventh round pick, I think, is absolutely absurd. The fact that they couldn't even get a seventh round pick for this year, couldn't even, it has to be for next year's draft, I think is absolutely absurd. I thought that there was potential for them to even be able to get a fifth or sixth round pick for this year just because of the value that Nick Folk brings. But I think Bill Belichick was doing his old pal, Mike Vrabel, a little bit of a favor there. As they see, we are lagging a little bit. Something else that we want to talk about before getting on to all the other cuts is the Patriots did place 2 players on injured reserve. They did not make the initial 53-man roster, which does mean that their season is over. That's rookie cornerback Isaiah Bolden and offensive tackle Connor McDermott. Obviously, Bolden going down with that injury against the Packers. He was someone who was going to struggle to make the roster. I think it was between him and Amir Speed. This gives him the ability, and Patriots the ability, to have him back next year without having to release him. So he'll fight for a roster spot next year, and they get to keep him on that rookie deal, a guy that definitely showed a lot of promise. And then Connor McDermott, this one did surprise me a little bit. I thought that he was pretty solid for the Pats. He was always rolling with the ones. They did try him that second preseason game, I believe the first preseason game rather, over at left tackle while he's a right tackle. So that one didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. He was dealing with some injury problems. And to me, this is one of those situations where the Patriots said, honestly, we just want the insurance policy for next year. You're not going to make the roster this year, so we're going to put you on IR so we can get you back next year. So again, that means both of those players are done for the season, and then 2 players were placed on the injured reserve and can return week 5. So these 2 players are going to be out for the first 4 weeks because they are on the PUP list. That's defensive end Trey Flowers, who was starting to make strides into coming back, but when the Patriots signed him, was dealing with some type of undisclosed injury. And then Cody Davis, a guy who dealt with a season-ending injury during the beginning of the 2022 season, who honestly not 100% sure why he's here. I really thought that they could have let him go. And maybe if for the first 4 weeks, their special teams is performing fine, then they say, you know what, Cody Davis, we are just going to release you because, again, quite honestly, he hasn't, performed on this team in just about a year. So I think we'll be fine without him. And with the season and injury at his age, I don't see necessarily how he comes back. Moving on to the cuts here, linebacker Ronnie Perkins. This was one where it's not too surprising. I think if they didn't have the depth at defensive end, they would have kept him. He finally flashed as a 3rd-round pick. Maybe a team who needs some defensive line help takes a chance on him. He looked really good in that final preseason game against the Titans, but is that enough for a team to grab him? I'm not 100% sure it is. So I think he'll be back on the practice squad. They also released running back Ty Montgomery. Spoiler alert, the Patriots have 2 running backs on their active roster. After trading Pierre Strong, I kind of assumed that Ty Montgomery would have been the guy that makes the roster, and he's not. With his injury history, he's a guy that they could probably get on the practice squad also and doesn't need to clear waivers. Linebacker Joe Giles-Harris is a guy they cut as one of their last cuts. So they definitely seem to like him. I'm sure he's a guy that will be back on their practice squad, but absolutely no reason he should have made the final roster. Offensive lineman James Ferentz, he is also being cut. He was being replaced by rookies. I didn't see how he was going to make the final roster anyway. He'll be back on the practice squad to give them an insurance policy. Offensive lineman Bill Murray, a guy who they like very much. Don't see him getting claimed also. He'll be back on the practice squad. Wide receiver Thyrick Pitts. He's a guy that started to perform well at the end of camp and in our final couple preseason games and in joint practice. I don't see a team going and grabbing him, putting him on their 53. I don't see him getting claimed on waivers. I think he will be back on the practice squad also. Offensive tackle Andrew Stuber, who had an absolute rough camp. I do think he's a guy the Patriots will ultimately keep around to try to continue to develop, but I thought he had a bit of a rough offseason. Running back Kevin Harris, former 6th-round pick. He should be a guy that absolutely clears waivers and gets back to the practice squad. Wide receiver Rowley Webb, special teamer. He's a guy that, unless a team needs some special teams help, he should revert back to the practice squad and probably get some elevations. A surprising one here for me in linebacker, Calvin Munson. I really thought that he was going to beat out Mac Wilson. I truly did. I know a lot of people thought that that was a hot take, but even in that final preseason game against the Titans, I think we saw that he does deserve a spot on a final roster. I thought he fit the Patriots defensive scheme way better than Mac Wilson does, who cannot stop the run. He's a little bit better in coverage, has speed, and is more of a special teamer. To me, it seemed like the perfect Belichick move to put on Calvin Munson over Mac Wilson. That does not happen here, but Calvin Munson was one of their last cuts, so it does show that they are very, very interested in bringing him back. If he clears waivers, he will 100% be back on the practice squad. Running back J.J. Taylor, another surprising cut. He wasn't at practice today for personal reasons, and then we find out that he was cut. He very well could get claimed off of waivers, and it wouldn't surprise me. I think he's improved in all three phases of the game, and I think that there's a team that could potentially take a chance on him. They usually keep 4 running backs, and they're keeping 2 this year. I really thought that after trading Pierre Strong, that it was going to be between Ty Montgomery and J.J. Taylor, and both guys ultimately get cut. Obviously, the quarterback situation, which we talked about a little bit earlier, Malik Cunningham being cut. This one, I said I had him making the roster because I wasn't sure if he was going to clear waivers. But in my own personal opinion, there was nothing that, to me, he did that solidified he should have an actual roster spot. Guys, he played great against the Texans in the fourth quarter of a preseason game against a bunch of 3s and 4s. We're hyping him up a little bit. And I would like to see how he continues to develop, because they're trying him in a multitude of different ways as a gunner on special teams, as a wide receiver. And I think he was finally starting to develop. But for everybody to say that he was going to beat out Mac Jones, or that he was this elite second string quarterback because he played a decent fourth quarter week 1 preseason game, is absolutely mind-blowing. The bigger mind blower here was Bailey Zappi being released. Now, Bailey Zappi had a really rough offseason, passes being batted down in the preseason and training camp at the line of scrimmage. The fact that in a practice, your passes are being batted down, not even by defensive backs, but literal defensive linemen, and then obviously had a just horrific preseason. Didn't think they would cut him. I think he showed a lot of promise. I just think he was having a sophomore slump. I don't think he's quarterback 1. I never believed in Zappi fever, but to straight out cut him was a little surprising, and it wouldn't surprise me to see a team claim him off of waivers. Joshua Bledsoe was another one, which was a little bit of a surprising move. I didn't have him on my final roster just because I couldn't personally squeeze him on there, but we do know that the Patriots really, really like him. He was another who was literally one of their final roster cuts. So he will be back on the practice squad. I don't think a team is going to claim him, and the Patriots absolutely love him. I'm sure he'll get a couple of elevations here. Also, the Patriots also cut tight end Matt Sokol. I thought the Patriots are only going to roll with 2 tight ends. The Patriots do only roll with 2 tight ends. Matt Sokol being one of those guys that's cut. I think they're going to be on the active lookout to add a new tight end. And if that guy presents himself, then he'll either be added to the 53 or he'll be added to the practice squad. But I would assume that one, if not both, of Matt Sokol and name's escaping me right now. I'm sure we'll get to him here in a minute. Anthony Ferkser, I'm sure that one, if not both of those guys, will be back on the practice squad. But offensive lineman Cody Russi also being released here. Guy they like, dealt with some injuries. I'm sure he'll be reverted back to the practice squad too. Defensive lineman Jeremiah Farms. He's a guy that I thought was performing really well, could potentially secretly squeeze his way on to that 53-man roster. Doesn't, but again, a guy who's one of their last cuts. That tells us that they were at practice. They're at least telling them, hey, stick around because we want to bring you back. I think that he comes back on this practice squad and potentially get some elevations with some question marks at defensive tackle. Like I said, Anthony Ferkser also being a guy that was cut. Offensive lineman Chasen Hines was also cut. He's a guy that wouldn't surprise me if the team does claim him. I thought that he was a little questionable in pass protection at times, very good as a run blocker. And I thought that, especially in the preseason, he was one of their best offensive linemen, and he's definitely starting to come of ways. Quarterback Trace McSorley, one of their first cuts. He won't be back. He shouldn't be back. Punter Corliss Waitman, he could sneak his way back on the practice squad as just an insurance policy, but he was one of their first cuts, so it wouldn't surprise me if he isn't. Carl Davis, he pretty much said his farewells to New England. He should be gone. Linebacker Diego Fagot, one of their first cuts, but I thought he had a pretty good preseason outside of a couple of flags and penalties. Brad Hawkins, a guy they've had around the last couple of years. Tight end Johnny Lumpkin. Running back CJ Marable. Cornerback Quandre Mosley, cornerback Rodney Randall, defensive tackle Justice Tavai, offensive lineman Makai Vanterpool, tight end Scotty Washington, and linebacker Carson Wells. The guys that are usually released first are the guys that they're basically saying, we're probably not going to bring you back. Go ahead, go out, take a few days to try to find a new team. Guys that they released the latest are guys that they pretty much plan on keeping around the team. But now let's get on to the Patriots' final 53-man roster. Starting off with quarterbacks, we obviously have one in, it's Mac Jones. That's not going to happen the entire season. I thought they could potentially roll with 3 quarterbacks. That's something they do. They're going to add a guy, whether that's bringing Bailey Zappi back if he clears waivers, or maybe they try to bring a guy like Colt McCoy back, which is someone who I initially thought straight off the bat when they released both quarterbacks that could be someone they're interested in. He does have a lot of interest, though, from other teams around the league, so they would have to give him quite a bag for a backup quarterback. But I do still think it's a possibility. Kellen Mond is another guy I wouldn't mind seeing for them as quarterback too. I know that they're also interested in Will Grier, which if you're going to freaking put Will Grier as your second string quarterback, why would you cut Bailey Zappi? You have 2 running backs on the roster, Ramondre Stevenson and Zeke Elliott. I would imagine that one running back at least gets added there, but maybe they say, hey, we can get JJ Taylor or Ty Montgomery, or even both of those guys. We feel comfortable with just elevating those guys from a week-to-week basis. That wouldn't surprise me. Also, 6 wide receivers make the final roster. We nailed that one perfectly. Juju Smith-Schuster, Devontae Parker, Kendrick Bourne, Tyquan Thornton, DeMario Douglas, and Kayshon Boutte. Again, I do think Tyquan Thornton tomorrow will be placed on the IR and miss the first 4 weeks, and that will clear up a roster spot. I projected all of that in my roster prediction, and I'm glad to see that the 2 rookies made it. 2 tight ends here, Hunter Henry, Mike Gesicki. I think the same thing will happen with tight end. That could happen with running back, in that you might only see 2 tight ends on the active roster, but they'll elevate a couple of tight ends depending on which game plan they're rolling with offensively from a week-to-week basis. And that's how you get 3 tight ends on the game day active roster. Offensive tackle, we have 6. That's going to be Trent Brown, Riley Reiff, Calvin Anderson, who finally returned to practice today. Don't know what his injury or medical issues were, but he's finally back. Finally back, giving the Patriots some much-needed depth there at tackle. Sidney So makes the final roster, and then obviously Tyrone Wheatley and Vidarian Lowe, both guys who they just traded for, obviously going to make the roster. And then guard, only have 3, which surprised me. With Michael Onwenu and Cole Strange both dealing with offseason injuries, I really did think that they were going to roll with at least 1 more. But no, Michael Onwenu, Cole Strange, and Antonio Mafi are going to be your guards, and 2 centers in David Andrews and Jake Andrews. No surprise there. I'm sure we'll see Jake Andrews at some point this season. And then moving on to defense, edge rushers, we have 5 with Matt Judon, Dietrich Wise, Josh Uche, Keon White, and Anthony Jennings. No surprise there. No surprise there at all. And then 5 interior defensive linemen with Devon Godchow, Christian Barmore, Lawrence Guy, Daniel Aquale, and welcome to the roster, Sam Roberts. Sam Roberts makes this 53-man roster 2 years in a row. I really thought that after some of those penalties and how this roster was shaping, that he could be a guy that was on the outside looking in. But the truth is that he probably wouldn't have gotten him back on the practice squad. So it was a good idea that they kept him. I thought that he applied really good pressure with a couple of good run stops in the preseason. So glad that they have him as a depth piece for sure. Linebackers, 4, they'll have Juwan Bentley, Jelani Tabai, Marte Mapu, and Mac Wilson. You got to imagine that Mac Wilson at this point is not going to get a whole lot of defensive snaps. He didn't get any defensive snaps the final 5 weeks of the 2022 season. So I don't see what's going to change now. He hasn't looked any different to me. I would imagine that your starting linebackers are Juwan Bentley, Jelani Tavai, with Marte Mapu obviously mixed in there. And then cornerbacks, 6, Jonathan Jones, Christian Gonzalez, Jack Jones, Marcus Jones, Miles Bryan, and Sean Wade. I think we also predicted that one perfectly. A lot of people want to say, why is Malik Cunningham, why Bailey Zappi get cut, but Miles Bryan is on the team? Guys, Miles Bryan is a guy that's just been utilized incorrectly. He definitely has some inconsistencies, but you're not asking him to be cornerback 1. You're not asking him to be cornerback 2. Don't ask him to go against your fastest wide receiver or your tallest wide receiver, and you'll be okay. I still think he's better as a safety. That's just me personally, but he has had a very good offseason. Believe what you want. Hate him as much as you want. He's had a very good offseason, and he actually serves a purpose on a actual consistent game day roster versus somebody like Malik Cunningham. And then Sean Wade, happy that he was able to make the roster. I think he made big strides this offseason. And with his size, I think we'll go such a long way. And we'll see him active in some games this year for sure. And then 4 safeties, Kyle Duggar, Adrian Phillips, Jabril Peppers, Jalen Mills. No surprise there. 1 kicker in Chad Ryland, the rookie, makes it. The rookie punter also makes it in Bryce Behringer. Lawn snapper, Joe Cardona, and then your special teamers are going to be Matthew Slater, Brendan Schooler, Chris Board, and Amir Speed. The only one that surprised me there was honestly Amir Speed. I'm going to be honest, I don't think Amir Speed did anything to truly make this final roster. He isn't going to get snaps defensively. I don't see why he would. He has the height, but he really wasn't rolling with the defensive starters much at all. That guy was really Isaiah Bolden. Isaiah Bolden obviously out for the year on IR. I think that is what honestly opened up the spot for Amir Speed. And he's just going to be your special teamer. That's it. We're used to seeing those guys. That's what Amir Speed's going to be. It's going to be a gunner for you. So that is going to be your initial 53-man roster. I will post the practice squad on my community tab when we do get that. But again, this is the initial. Expect a couple of changes to be made to this active roster. Some guys going on IR to start the season. Some guys will obviously be transported to that 53-man roster as a couple of spots on this 53 will open. But what are your guys' thoughts? What were some of your surprises? Let me know in the comment section below. How do you feel about this roster heading into week 1 against the Philadelphia Eagles? Let me know in the comment section below. It would mean the world to me if you guys left a massive like on this video. Truly supports the channel. And let's see if we can get 300 likes on this video. Make sure you guys go ahead and check out those sponsors for me. Like I said, sign up for them, check them out, and consider betting on them. It really helps out the channel, especially in these rough times where the channel is unfortunately demonetized. As always, I appreciate you guys for watching. And of course, never forget